I'm too classy for this world. Ooh, baby. Oh, I send you with my love. Ooh, baby. Category: sexy bitch on the bar. Alien superstar. Hello, it's Kendall here. If you're new around here, welcome. If you're not new around here, what is up, home skillet biscuit? And happy Saturday. Generally on Saturdays, I do something called Bad Movies in a Beat, the series on my channel where I talk about bad movies when I put my makeup on. But I often change that idea the last minute. And that's how we got here. Today we're not talking about bad movies, we're talking about classics. I've done a video similar to this several months ago when I watched 3 classic controversial movies, and this week I happened to watch 3 very famous horror movies that I had never watched because I make lists of things to get around to and don't. But before we get over to that, as you know the drill, bills must be paid, so we're gonna send it over to Admiral Kennie. Thank you. Hello everyone, it's Admiral Kennie, and today's video is sponsored by HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit delivery service that allows you to have fresh, delicious, and healthy meals delivered straight to your front doorstep. With pre-portioned ingredients that allows you to get a meal on the table in under 30 minutes, sometimes less than 10. It's real speedy sometimes. Sometimes it's just putting stuff in the microwave. I love though. But most meals are around the 20-30 minute mark. I've been working with HelloFresh for a little while now, and I gotta say, while using HelloFresh and when I'm not using HelloFresh, I'm just a better cook these days. I have more ideas. I can get things on the table really quickly. And so if you feel like, oh, I can't cook, try HelloFresh because you probably can. It's a great way to try out new recipes, get out of recipe ruts, and most importantly, go to the grocery store less, because there are few things more tedious and annoying than having to go to the grocery store. Buy stuff that you'll only use for that one recipe and then never again, and then you just spent $15 on something that you'll never use in any other circumstance. Well, this way you get just like the tablespoon that you need for whatever you're making, and you make it for that, and then it's gone. Cleanup is also a breeze. You just put everything that you have as scraps and trash and put that in the bag and throw the bag away. You're sure to find some meals that you enjoy if you're pescatarian, if you're vegetarian, if you're watching your calories, watching your carbs, whatever dietary restriction you're trying to pay attention to, you're sure to find something that will honor that. Go to HelloFresh.com and use code Kennie16 for 16 free meals across 7 boxes and 3 free gifts. Big thanks again to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get on to the debauchery, baby. This, that, that nana, that oochie coochie la la. I don't know if that's the words, but it feels right. So last week, we talked about Geely. By the way, during that video, I told you guys that I would have an episode of my podcast In Defense Of coming out, and it was also in Geely because that's what inspired the video that I made. They're like companion pieces, so if you want to check that out, I'm gonna link it down below, and if I remember, I'll put it in last week's description box as well. Anyway, it was one of the worst movies I'd seen in a very long time, and it excited me so much. It was awful, but my God, is it something to behold, and I see why it's so famous for being just batshit and a terrible movie, and for nothing else. If you want to check that out, by the way, it'll be linked up above, or you can check it out in the Bad Movies in a Beat playlist. So like I said, this week is not a bad movie, but instead very classic horror movies. And you're probably like, Kendall, what spurred this video? Well, your girl just came back from vacation. You didn't even know it. You didn't even see me slipping. I did stuff ahead of time for once, which is ironic because I'm filming this at 3 in the afternoon, the day before you're going to see it. I don't know. It's one of the things that makes me feel like I'm living dangerously. I'm living on the edge, you know? I went to Vegas. I was there on like a girls trip. Well, I also went to LA, but Vegas too. And while we were there, it ended up turning into, weirdly enough, its own version of a business trip. So I got some work done. But one of the things that I accidentally realized would have made a great video was when I was talking to my friend. She was like, hey, I grew up on like classic horror films, and we were talking about the ones that she'd seen, and all of them were on the list that I needed to get around to and I had never seen. She was like, what, you've never seen these? And I'm like, I know, chill on me. I was raised very religious. It's not that they wouldn't let me watch certain movies, but they weren't like super big on encouraging watching like devil shit. So I had never gotten around to them. And then after that, after I became an adult, I just forgot that I need to get around to them. These are some names, baby. And you're gonna judge me too, because everyone keeps judging me for not seeing these movies up until now. But whatever, I've done it. Those films being The Shining, 1980. Stanley Kubrick directed based off of a Stephen King novel. Carrie, also Stephen King, 1976. Directed by Brian De Palma. And The Exorcist, 1973. Written by William Peter Blatty, and directed by William Friedkin. I know, you're sitting there like, Kendall, you call yourself a movie buff, you call yourself someone who likes movies. I make movies on trash, babe, and that takes up a lot of time. So much time that you don't actually have time to get around to watching good movies sometimes. As I've kind of said in the past, my taste in movies are polarizing. They're like, I like really good movies, or I should say like art film, or showgirls. I love trash and I love treasures. They are indeed two halves of the same coin. Because I do bad movies to be, it tends to take up a lot more space, terrible movies, and my list of quote unquote classics is growing ever longer, as well as movies that are more contemporary that I'm occasionally getting around to. But again, it takes time for that pendulum to swing. With that said, I have in the last few months crossed off a few of the classics on my list. I saw A Clockwork Orange. I don't get it. I think it was nice looking. I think it's a beautiful, like, stylistically made. But as far as like the substance of the movie, I don't find that there is any. It just gives very like white man violence fantasy. And it's not like I wasn't trying to understand the movie. I saw a bunch of video essays and I watched a documentary actually on HBO. Do y'all hear that they merging with Discovery Plus? Who knew Discovery Plus had any money? Who's watching Discovery enough to buy HBO? Anyway, I watched a documentary on A Clockwork Orange and like its like cultural impact or whatever, largely to again try to understand what am I supposed to be seeing here. Nothing. Every video essay, every essay I ever read, every documentary I've been watching only gave me supplemental reasons to not like the movie. This isn't like a classic, but I watched Mother yesterday. I liked it, but I get why people don't. Do not watch that movie if you're having a bad day. Do not watch that movie if you expect to feel whole and okay afterwards. Nobody warned me. I think it's for the girls with Judeo-Christian religious trauma or like an upbringing in those religions, because otherwise you may not get some of the references, and therefore the whole movie just feels like chaos and you don't know why anything's happening. But if you kind of understand where they're coming from, it's like, I get where you're going. I don't want to go on this ride, but I get where you're going. Movie, truly. I'm not being facetious, and I know so many people are gonna be like, it can't be that bad. It's that bad. Like, but good ass movie. So don't say I didn't warn you. And when you come tweeting me, be like, oh my god, what the was that? I also have a bunch of movies that are based off of Stephen King books, so I should probably just do all those in one day. Specifically Misery. I want to get around to that. Silence of the Lambs. That's not Stephen King, I don't think. I haven't seen Silence of the Lambs. I know. But I know the gist of that movie. And part of me doesn't even want to watch it because of that. Yeah, there's a lot of movies that I need to get around to. Anyway, but again, I watched these three. The Shining, Carrie, the original Carrie, The Exorcist. So I feel like one thing that all of these movies have in common is if you're around my age and older, they may be movies that you find are a part of your childhood in a way. Like they're known for being scary. And they're known for being like something sort of like a rite of passage to some degree. Like, were you able to watch The Exorcist all the way through at the sleepover or whatever? But because I'm watching them in 2022 adult, I don't have that like foundation for them. So I was curious, if I watched them today, 2022 with a current lens, would I find them as scary as someone did in 73 or whatever? With that said, I've seen like iconic scenes from each of them just kind of like on accident. The only movie that I saw a scene from as a child, though, was The Shining. I saw the Here's Johnny scene accidentally. I still don't know how I saw it, and I was very young, and that me up. Just like really terrified that somebody, because I didn't know what else was happening in the movie. I just knew he was axing his way into a door, and so I was like, wow, if someone tries to axe their way into the door, I need to figure out what to do. I prepared to go to war and see if I could kill a man with a Pez dispenser and an unopened bottle of RC Cola. Never figured anything out. Do they still make RC Cola? It was the 90s, whatever. And then later in life, I had seen like some iconic scenes from Carrie, the blood, the car blowing up, and then like the head spinning pea soup shit from The Exorcist. But outside of that, I had never again seen the films. And so I was prepared to go in understanding that I was going to see these movies from a 2022 lens. And I was going to account for that, understanding that these movies were made in a completely different like social context with different access to technology. CGI basically wasn't a thing from what I understand. So what I was expecting is something that maybe wouldn't scare me now, but I could see it would scare someone in the 70s and the early 80s. But what I did not prepare for was that every single one of these movies are incredibly campy now. And I don't know if that's just by default because movies in the 70s and the 80s were more campy. One movie in particular is what's coming to mind. Incredibly campy and incredibly funny to me. And I know it's not supposed to be. And it really left people shook when it came out. But like, here I am watching it now. Hilarious. I'm sorry, but that's what it is. That's how I feel. And so we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about each of the movies, talk about like what I felt watching the movies, any research I might have done afterwards because I got curious. And that's going to be the time today. So with that said, I'm going to attempt to not spoil the movies if you, like me, have never seen them. So maybe now you too can finally get it off of your to-watch list. It's been 6 years, Sarah. Time to bite the bullet and finally watch The Exorcist. So first up, though, we have The Shining, again, 1980. Accidentally, I ended up watching these movies in reverse chronological order, so that's fun. So The Shining is the story of a writer, Jack Torrance, and his family, wife Wendy and his son Danny, who become caretakers at a hotel in Colorado. Jack is there looking to cure his writer's block, I guess like a change of scenery or something to open himself up a bit. The hotel, however, has a very dark vibe. Spoiler, axe murder, which their son Danny seems to have some type of like psychic understanding or knowledge about, seemingly being somewhat clairvoyant, particularly around the weird happenings that have taken place or will take place at the hotel. It stars Jack Nicholson and Jack Nicholson's face, which has terrified me since childhood, as well as Shelley Duvall as Wendy. And I gotta say, they casted beautifully for this movie because again, Jack Nicholson's face. Now, I gotta say, of all the films that we are talking about today, this is the one that I feel like has aged the best because of Jack Nicholson's face. I don't want this to come off as a read because it's not. Like, he was never unattractive. He's just a guy. But there's something about Jack Nicholson's face that frightens me. He just has a scary ass face. I know he played the Joker at one point, but honestly, I feel like the Joker plays him. You feel? Like, also, I think it doesn't help that in this movie, he plays a deranged, abusive husband really well. I don't know if that's a compliment or not. He's very convincing, and he freaks me out. But in fairness, I did like you in Something's Gotta Give. A much softer Jack Nicholson. But he still has that face though, so it still freaked me out a little bit. Visually, this movie is still incredibly striking. Like, again, the scenes that kind of come to mind when you think of The Shining. Blood in the hallway, the elevator. Here's Johnny! The kid on the tricycle finding the two twin ghosts, dead girls. Not to mention the furry fellatio. I somehow forgot about that one. Like, some of these scenes are legitimately still very off-putting and uncomfortable. The first one that comes to mind, again, is Here's Johnny. But the other one is that one where it's like he's pleading for Wendy to let him out and it's like under his chin, and it's just some of the most disorienting camera work. Like, why would you do this? Like, I know why, but just like, ew, let me free of this claustrophobic under his chin shot. However, there are a few scenes in this movie that are really funny to me. Mainly the ones that are like high tension with Wendy swinging the bat. Because it starts off with her finding his manuscript that he's supposed to be writing here, right? And he just says, all work and no play makes Johnny a dull boy, over and over and over again. And she doesn't just look at the first few pages. That thing is like a million pages thick. And she's like, I got to make sure it's every single one, because maybe it was a typo somewhere along the way. Then he comes in, he starts doing his like crazed murderous rampage monologue or whatever. And she just swinging, and I'm like, babe, you're gonna wear yourself out. Wait till he gets like over the plate. Ball, bitch, you're striking out. I say that like I know what sports are. Now, I'm not saying that Shelley Duvall did a bad job. Quite the opposite. I think she did good for, again, the very campy 80s. However, it's still campy. Like when she runs away like this. Oh! Ah! When the movie first came out, it was kind of a flop, but it's, of course, over the years garnered this kind of cult classic. If that's even what I would call it. It's not a cult so much as it is people just like this movie now and they didn't like it before. Because I guess when I think of cult classics, I think of ones that are still often shunned. But there's this like very particular group of people who have found some value in it. Or maybe it could just be like people are really into the movie in general, so it's a cult. I never really asked myself what is actually meant by the term cult classic. I really should stop saying stuff before I know what they mean. Something, typically a movie or book, that is popular or fashionable among a particular group or section of society. Okay, there you go. So I was correct. I think it has garnered this audience because of like hindsight. People are able to look at it now and see that the movie was a bit before its time. But yeah, the movie is actually really, really good. I want to spend more time watching it. Maybe, looking at if there's any documentaries or something I can find about it. I think it would be pretty interesting. And it's a movie that I would definitely watch again now that I've gotten it off my list for the first time. It's a good movie. I think of the movies that I watched for this video, it's the one that aged the best. Okay, next up is Carrie. Oh boy, Carrie's been on the list for a while, and I don't know why. I just never got around to it. I'm really bad at getting around to things in general. Carrie, if you don't know, is 1976. It's a film adaptation of Stephen King's first novel, actually. It's his first one, which I didn't know that. It is about the story of a girl named Carrie who has supernatural, like telekinetic powers, and she's bullied terribly by the other girls in school and is like also terrorized by her fanatically religious mother. And again, I had been kind of privy of some of the more iconic visuals of the movie without seeing it, the bloody prom, the car setting on fire, flipping around. This movie comes up a lot in like horror directors' list of things that they think of when they think of like movies that inspired them and movies that made them want to create movies, and particularly in the horror genre. Again, a lot of like religious allegory and a lot of references there. A subject matter that I would imagine scared a lot of people in the 70s. Imagine bullying the girl with superpowers. That doesn't even make sense to me. Like, even if she don't want people to notice she got powers, she can't just like have one person have a very ostentatious yet mysterious fall down the stairs and then spread a rumor about how just mysterious bad things happen to people that with the weird girl. Problem solved. At least school problems would be solved. Like, I did struggle a bit to really see what it is about this movie that made it particularly a cult classic outside of, well, the prom scene is pretty a lot. I could see the prom scene being particularly striking. Like, her eyes are open like this the whole time. Whoa, whoa, whoa. And like the blood and stuff, I could see being very striking. But like outside of that, I don't really know what it is that made this movie such a classic for people. It was fine. I don't know if I want to watch this movie again though. Maybe once. Like if someone has it on, maybe I'd watch it, but I don't think I would go out of my way to watch it again. There are parts of this movie that I find very, very funny, and I'm not 100% sure if I was opposed to. One, which is like more so of a hindsight thing, is because it's apparently John Travolta's first movie, and they introduce him in the trailer.
Starring Sissy Spacek, Piper Laurie, and introducing John Travolta.
As like, in his first motion picture role, John Travolta. And I thought it was funny. And it's funny how he looks exactly the same. He has such a immobile face. And they make him like a jock with a really high voice, and he's the worst. And I just thought it was kind of funny. There was a scene where her mom gets like stabbed crucifix style and then like orgasms to death. I don't think that's what they were going for, but that's what it felt like. It was, or maybe they were. It was just very sexual. Her terrifying Jesus statue, bug-eyed Jesus. Later I found out in like a little trivia thing that it's not actually Jesus, it's Saint Sebastian. But I enjoy saying the phrase bug-eyed Jesus because it's funnier. So I think one of the reasons why it's kind of hard for me to get into this movie is that it gives a little bit, it's giving a little bit school shooter. Okay, so I dropped that bomb and didn't finish that thought at all. What I mean by that is like, okay, we're going to look at this as like a revenge from bullying movie, or just like what drives people to the edge, I guess. And the thing that throws me is that she killed everybody. She killed a band. She killed teachers that were nice to her. She killed everybody. And I'm like, this is giving school shooter. It's like, well, he was so bullied in school and he, you know, had a rough time at home. Bitch, and he came there to just play the band. He don't even know that bitch. And now he dead. Electrocuted alive. Like, what the fuck? I found myself not being able to really care about anybody in this movie. I didn't feel particularly sympathetic towards Carrie, and all the other people sucked. So I don't know what you want me to feel about this movie. Again, I'd watch it if somebody else put it on, but that's about it. And finally, what has been touted as the scariest movie by many ever made. That is The Exorcist, 1973. I've been meaning to watch this movie for years. It comes up all the time as like a horror classic. So I like grew up aware of the movie and some of the like general iconic moments. But more so than that, I just heard from everybody how the movie is just so freaking terrifying, especially from the 70s. As a child, I didn't want to watch it because ew, the 70s. That's old people. I just keep forgetting like that's on the, again, the infinite list of like classics or movies that I need to get around to that aren't necessarily terrible. Like I knew that it inspired so many people to go into film, particularly horror film. Like I knew about the spinning head and the vomit, the zombie doll, the exorcism itself. I can definitely understand why this movie would have freaked out a lot of people in that like early satanic panic post Rosemary's Baby phenomenon, yada yada. So I did go in expecting to be scared out of my mind. Or if not, I expected to see something that would really make sense to me why it freaked out so many people during that era. And the latter I did see. I did see a lot that made sense to me in regards to why people would be really freaked out by this film. But to be very honest with you, this movie is hilarious. This movie is so unintentionally funny to me. I am curious for people that have like grew up with this movie, and if you watch it now, do you feel the way I feel right now, or do you still feel the like visceral terror that it gave you as a child? It's about an exorcism. Duh. Done by an exorcist. Also, duh. The movie follows a family in which the daughter gets possessed by the demon Pazuzu, and the only way to free her is via exorcism by a local priest. And so the movie is kind of us going along with trying to figure out how to rid her of the demon so that she's not, you know, cursing obscenities, unclean spirit, stabbing herself in the nether regions with a crucifix and floating in midair. I saw the director's cut, so there was a part where she backbend spider walks down the stairs and then bleeds out of her mouth, which was hilarious to me because in the next scene she back in her bed. How you get her into bed? How you get her back? We also follow the priest that ends up coming along to help with the exorcism, a Father Carras. Father. He was kind of cute. Hey, daddy. Father. For the 70s, he was nice looking. Anyway, what I did find particularly interesting, and maybe the only thing that made me feel truly uneasy within this movie, were the moments in which the possessed little girl, her name is Reagan, starts yelling out all the things that would be very triggering to the priest who had just lost his mom.
Would it be powerless to harm her? Your mother sucks in hell.
You let her die! You left her to die! I was like, that's fucked up. I don't want to say a lot of the reasons why it's a classic is because people saw it young, but I do wonder, would it still be considered a classic if it weren't already a classic? You know what I mean? Like I was saying before, I feel like The Shining has aged really well. I think it would make you uncomfortable right now. It would make you uncomfortable regardless. There's some moments of the movie that I'm like, oh, this probably would have been freakier a few years ago, and it feels a little overdone now because everyone's been copying The Shining. And maybe that's the issue that I have with this movie, The Exorcist, because everyone's kind of like taken their piece away from it, I guess. So it didn't do anything for me. It just made me laugh. If anything, it made me laugh. I would watch it again though, willingly. Like I would watch it again because it was hilarious to me. I do want to know more about it. I think logistically how it was made is very fascinating from the 70s because they did some really interesting things, you know, prior to a lot of CGI. So the makeup job was really, really good. But outside of that, I just found the movie really funny accidentally and campy. But I did enjoy watching it. I admittedly more than I enjoyed watching Carrie. I found Carrie to drag. This movie also drags, but Carrie honestly wasn't worth watching until the prom scene. Those are my initial reviews and probably pretty controversial opinions on 3 horror movie classics. I'm curious how you guys feel about it. Also, like when you first saw the movie, like if you saw it as a kid versus if you saw it as an adult. And I'm curious what your opinions are at this point because of that. I'm excited to continue to tackle my ever-growing list of movies that are supposed to be pretty good or are classics that I haven't gotten around to yet. It's good to do a pit stop along the way and let you guys know how that's all going. But if you like this video, feel free to like this video. Follow me on all my social media, Instagram and Twitter, both of which are KennieJD. If you have a good movie, a bad movie, a classic movie, a campy movie, a controversial movie that you'd like me to check out, always feel free to put those down in the comment section. And I still don't like this lip better. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.